Thank you everyone for joining us for Rapid Recovery, winning your advertisers back after COVID. We've got a lot to show you today, some strategies for getting those advertisers back, but also some items if you are a Broadstreet customer, some items that you might find really useful, including some things that you probably haven't seen before. And even if you are not a Broadstreet customer, giving some good ideas that you could probably implement with your existing tools, but if you can't, we can always talk about that too. As we go through this webinar, something that we've always had a lot of success with, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat. Me and Annette, we keep an eye on the chat as we're moving through the webinar content, and we're always happy to stop, go ahead, answer any questions, and that can give her kind of real world experience, especially if it's specific to an ad sales situation that you've been facing or a question on the material.
And yes, Philip Silvestri asked if it's being recorded, and yes, it is.
And yes, it is being recorded. It usually takes us a couple weeks to get everything produced and up on YouTube, but it will be recorded, and we will send that out to all the attendees, usually within the next couple of weeks. So a little bit about Broadstreet. Broadstreet is an ad manager for direct sales. So it is the software that publishers use to get advertisements up and running on their website in the different forms. Sometimes it's sponsored content, sometimes it's display advertising, sometimes it's newsletter advertising. The difference is that we're really focused on direct sales. So anybody who has a direct sales team, meaning you're working directly with your advertiser, we're really thinking about you and how we can help you be successful. Broadstreet is a small business, like many of its customers. So small team, bootstrapped, personal service. And because we've never really had any big financial backers, we've been able to really focus on the niche of direct sales and niche publishing. Doing that, Broadstreet has really become a platform very well suited to the needs of direct sales over time. And we've worked with over 500 publishers and local news, magazine, and niche media, working to take them where they are when they first talk to us. So sometimes they are just getting started as a digital publisher. Sometimes they're a print publisher moving into digital. Sometimes they're kind of all over the place and they just need some direction, taking them where they are and moving them to where they want to be. It's our focus, not just a platform, really a partner in helping you succeed. So let's actually talk about why we're here, right? 2020, the great detour. At the beginning of every year, publishers reach out to us. They want to get started with Broadstreet, ready for the next year, and who isn't motivated in January? What happened last year? Well, we know what happened. COVID, and with that, interrupted growth plans, right? Pandemic, a lot of uncertainty, the loss of advertiser accounts, which always hurts. And many publishers were kind of put into survival mode, just figuring out how to get through this. And how long is this whole thing going to take? We didn't know. So that was the worst of it, is that there's a lot of uncertainty around when the lockdowns were going to end, when things would open up, at what capacity. And I think a lot of us probably thought that the mask mandate and the lockdowns were going to continue through the end of the year, and they're starting to lift around the country right now. The good news, though, is that you're on this webinar, you're still standing. And if there's something that I personally admire in really anybody, it's grit and perseverance, kind of getting through the tough time and being ready to go after that. So there's always going to be setbacks, but ready to move forward after that setback. So you're still standing, congratulations, you're here. Let's talk about moving forward. So today we're going to talk about your current status. Where are you? And where do you want to be? Setting goals, planning, packages, which is where we're going to talk about some Broadstreet things and some things you can set up elsewhere, and then talk about the execution of that plan that we start to put together. But first, let's do a little bit of a checkpoint, figure out where we are, where we're going to go. This is kind of like a personal story, and I'll keep it quick, but a few years ago, I was visiting my sister-in-law in Detroit, and whenever I'm in a new city, of course, I like to kind of kick around, explore it, and I was driving around in my car, And I knew there was a waterfront in Detroit. I wanted to go check that out. I also didn't want to get out of my car. So I was trying to drive as close to the waterfront as I could get so I could see the water, any parks that were there, if there were any. What I ended up doing was inadvertently getting into a lane, which was a right only. So I couldn't get out of it. So I figured I'd make the right and figure out what, where to go next. It actually ended up taking me to the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel into Canada, right? So by the time I made this turn, and I was kind of coming up on the left-hand side, East Jefferson Avenue, and I made a right, and you can't really see it, but on the road, it says Canada only. But at that point, it was too late. I had to make a right. Yeah, so a little bit of a problem for me. So I couldn't really find an easy way to turn around. I could turn around, but it was like, it wasn't going to be a legal turn. But I did have my passport with me anyway, and I'm kind of a free spirit. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to Canada, right? I'll go check out Canada. I'll come back. And so I figured it'd be a good opportunity to explore Windsor, Canada, which up until that point I hadn't actually heard of. So I drive through the tunnel. I get to the other side in Canada, and I got a couple of questions which I wasn't really prepared to answer. Where are you coming from? Well, that one's easy enough. It's coming from Detroit. My sister-in-law is just exploring Detroit. Where are you headed to? And I didn't have an answer for this one. I said, I'm just here to check out Canada, right? Well, that actually, not having a clear answer here ended up being a problem for me, because he just kind of looked at me and asked me to explain further. Well, eventually I had to get into the story of how I'd made a wrong turn, but I figured I have my passports with me. So I just come and check out Canada, and everything was cool. Can I just go now? Well, they wouldn't let me go. They actually took me into the customs office and asked me some extra questions, right? So about 45 minutes to an hour later, I finally left the customs office, and, I stayed for about 45 minutes and had an equally hard time when I came back 45 minutes later. I don't think I looked terribly threatening. I had a polo on and have my wife and all my stuff in the back of the car, but yeah, they still took me in to interview me, and it was because I had no idea where I was going. So if we think about our business, whether we own the business, whether we're a partner in it or an ad sales director, it's really hard to move forward, to go anywhere if you don't know where you're going. The first thing we have to do, and if you think about really, we have Memorial Day coming up. There's going to be checkpoints, officers out there making sure everyone's driving safe. One of the first things they ask you is where are you coming from and where you're going. If you don't have a clear answer on where you're going, you're going to have a tough time getting past the checkpoint. It's going to raise a red flag. So when you're thinking about where you want to go with your business, you need to have a clear destination. And it could be department goals, it could be a goal for the actual business, but where is it that we're headed? We cannot move forward if we do not have a clear idea of where we're headed. So what I want everyone to do, we're going to be a little bit more interactive with this webinar. We're going to kind of break the mold. So I want you to think about where you are right now in terms of company status, staff size, revenue, right? And you might be thinking, well, we lost some staff. We lost some advertisers, we lost some revenue. We're doing, you're still here, which is good enough. But from here, where is it that you want to go? So think about at the end of the year, or at this point next year, where do you want to be? So it's probably back to where you were, resuming the goals that you had at the beginning of 2020, staffing all key areas if you did have to let anyone go, getting those areas staffed up again. If you're a solopreneur, paying yourself. If you're a business owner, making sure you have that margin back so the company's profitable. So think about where you want to be, and then consider how much revenue we need to actually do that. So the reason we didn't start with revenue is because a lot of times everybody would naturally say that, well, with the business, I want to grow it. I want to get more advertisers, I want to add more accounts. But that's not really what you're trying to do normally. Normally, you're trying to staff key areas, or you're trying to get to that place where you're making a salary that's equivalent to what you were doing before you start this business. There's a place that you want to be personally and with the company. And usually revenue is what enables that. right? So it's never like we're chasing money. We're chasing something else. And money is just one of the tools we use to get there. And that's why we're doing ad sales. So I want you to think about what that gap is. So if you were at 10,000 before, 10,000 a month, you're at 5,000 now. What are you trying to get back to? Are you trying to get back to 10,000? Are you trying to get back to 12,000? What is that number? And it's important to have that number. I don't want you to like take time out of the day and come to our webinar and not have that number in your head. So what I want you to do is write it down. Take 30 seconds and write it down. It could be on a piece of paper. It could be, if you don't mind sharing your numbers, you could do it in the chat. Write down at least either the revenue, the percentage of revenue that you need to increase, the number of accounts you would like to get on board, so new advertisers. And I'd also like to get a good idea, if anybody's interested in sharing in the chat, how many advertisers you need to get to in order to get to where you want to be. All right, cool. So Christine, you said 10,000 in new monthly sales. All right, perfect. So that's a good example. If anybody else has any, 10,000 is a really good number because that's actually the number that we use in our model in the upcoming slides. So think about that number, write it down, and it doesn't really become real until we write it down. So let's talk about the route to actually get there. So we have this number in our head. How are we going to progress from where we are now to where we want to be? We're going to use a strategy that is pretty well known in the larger sales industry. It's called land and expand. Right now, we know that most advertisers, they're kind of hurting from the pandemic. Not all of them. There are some advertisers who are doing really well or have done really well: real estate, mortgage brokers, healthcare. But our goal with advertisers, especially the ones who are very budget sensitive, we want to get them on board and comfortable. And there's a chance that we probably have to discount rates. So anybody in the chat, if you want to share what like your average discount, if you have been discounting your rates, looks like, we could discuss that. But Annette, I think you said that you've been discounting rates too, right?
Yes. My strategy and my approach was kind of empathetic, and I wanted our advertisers to know that we're all in it together and we were all suffering. And so I wanted to extend as much of a discount as possible during the initial months of COVID, as so that it was a win-win for both of us. They would get some exposure, they would get the publicity or the marketing assistance they needed, and we would still be bringing in a little bit of revenue. I didn't, expect everyone to be able to afford to advertise, but I wanted to make it as attractive as possible. And since our rates are based on location on the page and size of the ad, and the prices range from $50 a week to $17.50 a week. It is kind of, the prices are all over the map, and so I discount them differentially. The higher the price of the ad in the ad zone, the higher the discount. The lower, the price of the ad, the lowest discount. And that's
perfect.
Yeah.
And your goal over time is to basically move them upward from that initial discount.
Absolutely. Get them started, get them the visibility, the marketing help they need, get build their revenue up so they can eventually get on board with us with a more aggressive campaign with higher visibility and higher, click rates and calls to action and that sort of thing.
So this land and expand strategy, so it's basically get that relationship, right? Get that advertiser on board. We know we're probably going to have to discount, which is something that if you've seen our previous sales webinars, we're not super fond of discounting, but we're at a point where advertisers can be very price sensitive, and it's important for us to get that advertiser on board before someone else does, right? We want to get that relationship. So we may discount, and we want to allow some time for that relationship to build, to get that advertiser performance, and then eventually we're going to upsell them. But one of our favorite companies in the world over here at Broadstreet, HubSpot, right? They have a CRM, and their definition of land and expand is a strategy that starts when a sales rep lands a small deal with an organization, and from there they form a solid relationship through exemplary service, and they continue to sell into the organization, earning more business and bigger deals. So we start small. It's understood that we're going to try and grow this, but that is land and expand. So if you have seen a previous Broadstreet webinar, we have this 10K monthly plan. If we want to get to $10,000 a month in monthly revenue, this is what our previous plan looked like. We'd say, take that big goal, that things that is going to enable you to get to where you want to be. Take that big goal and then break it down into smaller packages. So we break that down and we say, okay, well, I'm going to have 10 $250 a month packages. I'm going to have 5 $500 a month packages. I'm going to have 5 $1,000 a month packages. So what's nice about this is that it takes that big goal, right? And it clears the fog a little bit. It makes it digestible. And if you break it down even further, you end up in a place where you say, okay, over the next quarter, could I get 5 advertisers on board? And 2 250s, 2 500s, 1 1000. It does not always work out perfectly, but can you get this? So previous Broadstreet webinars, we always gave you this model, but it's a little different right now. Right now, we're in a place where we probably do have to discount. So if we had that $250 a month package, we may need to discount down to $175. If we had a $500 a month package, we may need to discount down to $300 and $1,000 down to $600 in this case. The numbers, you could fine tune them, but you start smaller and then you try to upgrade them to the higher package. And it could come in, I mean, Annette, do you do it all at once? Do you kind of increase the rate slowly over time?
Yes, I do. First of all, I want them to renew. And so after they've gone through the initial ad campaign, I present them with their results, their metrics, to see how they perform. And if, hopefully it is done well. And then I will say, well, let's continue. But now, I would maybe increase it 20% or 30%. It's kind of intuitive. You have to feel and see how the customer is doing and what the results were, and see if they'd like to continue. Sometimes I just continue the discount for I said, well, I'll do that for a limited time, and then we'll review and see where we stand. And it is a gradual bump up with the goal of getting them to the full rate.
And how do you actually, before I move on, how do you position that discount to the advertiser? Is it something that, like, initially you say, hey, we're putting something together as like a COVID package, or are you just saying, hey, to get everybody ramped up again, we're discounting rates? How does that play out?
Yeah, I figure out what they are looking to buy in terms of length of the ad and the position on the page, what their best case scenario would be. And I said, hey, we want this to work for you. And we position it coming from, we're all going through hard times. This is COVID. We know you've had some setbacks. And so we have some COVID discounts in effect now for the next 3 months, and that gives me both of us a window in our heads. And that gives me the opportunity to say, okay, well, after 3 months, we're going to have to bump the price up if you want to continue. And that kind of, lays the groundwork for that.
And something we also talked about, now we're breaking it down to a week. All of a sudden, these prices become much more digestible. And we have a lot of local publishers. It may not work so well for an organization that's a little bit bigger, but weekly pricing. I've heard that more and more over the last few years. How do you feel about weekly pricing?
I adopted weekly pricing about 3 years ago. It just seemed that was more accessible to people when talking about pricing. They could envision a weekly expense in their operating budget easier than a big monthly expense. And that also gave them the flexibility to think, well, let's advertise for 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 10 weeks, and not be wedded to the month by month. And that made it more accessible, more appealing. And also it represented a lower, cost when you look at it the week by the week, and it was successful. So I always quote by the week.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So there are three approaches that publishers typically take here. The first is that you don't do anything, you do not upsell, right? So you sell the ad and you pray that the advertiser stays on board, right? That is by far the most common approach here. In fact, especially for solopreneurs, it feels kind of like it was scary enough to sell the ad, but then to go back and try and upsell them, it sounds like, when we really think about the money behind it, it can feel like something that you don't want to do. You might also get publishers who are reactive. So the advertiser reaches out and be like, hey, we've been sitting in this area for a little while. We want to maybe get some more visibility. And then you say, okay, well, we do have some packages where we can get you above the fold or at the top of the page. And then you're kind of reacting to the advertiser's needs. What the best salespeople do is that they're proactive, right? They watch the advertisers' campaigns, they see how they're performing, and if there's an opportunity to have a conversation to get that advertiser moved on to the next tier, they will do it, right? So being proactive with your advertisers and asking them if they'd be open to a conversation about getting more visibility, more clicks, talk about the benefits for them.
Yeah, and we have a couple of questions. Phil is asking, does weekly pricing require weekly invoicing? It can. If you look at the complete buy as maybe a 6-week buy, you can offer them. I offer my clients, I'm as flexible as I can be for them. Sometimes they want to pay all the 6 weeks up front. So that's one payment. And sometimes they want to be invoiced weekly. And I just set it up as a recurring charge. We use, a company that allows us to charge over. I can take information over the phone, enter on online and set up the weekly, monthly, or quarterly payment.
Just as a good to know, which company is that? Just in case anybody doesn't.
It's First Data. It's called First Data.
Okay, First Data. And to answer Christine, this is Annette Batson of Baristanet.
Yes. And what magazine I'm on? It's an online publication called Baristanet. We're located in Montclair, New Jersey. We have about 50,000 monthly unique readers. And we've been in business since 2004. Yes, I'll spell that. And there's another question. Let's see. I have no problem setting goals. How do you get advertisers to answer the phone? That's like a whole nother webinar. But the quick answer to that is be strategic in who you're approaching. People who you have to look at your ecosystem wherever, and you have to look at what your product is, and you have to try and figure out what matches, what makes sense, what advertiser will benefit from your publication, what readers are going to benefit from the advertisers you bring on board. I know that sounds, kind of obscure, but it's true. And I'll give you just my example of our town in Montclair. So we have about 37,000 people, an affluent, educated, diverse family town, bedroom community of New York City. And our priorities here are children's education, quality of life, restaurants, music, real estate. So those are the big, a lot of the topics we talk about and we write about on our blog, which we publish every day. And so when I started selling ads for Baristanet, I also started out as a writer, but then I kind of morphed into the ad thing and ad sales. I said, well, who's important in our community? And since we're a community blog, and we want to represent the pulse of the community, who needs to be an advertiser? And that was kind of my first strategy and MO, was to approach some big clients that I thought would benefit from having access to our readership, and our readership would be interested in what they had to offer. And those were the Montclair Art Museum, Montclair State University, the Montclair YMCA, and that, just to name a few. And those kind of became our anchor advertisers. And thanks to them, we're really able to stay profitable. And then everything else, which I brought on, was more catered to the interests of, like, they would relate to what we wrote about. They would, like, we have a food page, so I, went out and talked to restaurants, or we have a, entertainment and events for children and adults. On one, the children one, the family one is Thursday, the adult one is Friday. And so any event that's happening, like we have a film festival and we have a jazz fest, and of course those are the kind of people you want to attract as an advertiser, because you have so much to offer, and those are things that our readership are interested in. So that's my long and short answer. I hope that helped.
And we actually went over that in depth on the previous webinar, the Rookie's Guide to Ad Sales. So if the Street team or Tommy or Tanner, if you guys would like to drop that link into the webinar chat, for Phil, you'll kind of get the different tactics we use to try and get that advertiser to really take that baby step and respond to us, answer an email, kind of reply to us, all the follow-ups involved. There's a lot to that, and that's right, and that it probably does take a webinar in itself. So back to where we were, we have three approaches. We can sell and pray, we can be reactive, we can be proactive. So we want to be proactive in upselling that advertiser. But I do want you to ask, and this is probably ask yourself, and this is probably an obvious one, who hits their number faster, right? If we're being proactive, who's going to get to that end goal faster? So we're being strategic by using this land and expand strategy, but if we are revisiting advertisers throughout their campaigns, seeing where we can help them perform a little bit better, who's going to get to that goal faster? And we want to do this quickly because we only have so much time. We are trying to recover rapidly. So you can only do that if you have data. And this is something that Broadstreet tries to make pretty easily accessible, is the data for how a campaign is performing. So this is just a snapshot of one of Broadstreet's reports. If we can see that an advertiser is doing pretty well, but they could potentially benefit by getting into a different section of the website or by getting a better placement, we need data to make the case that they should move to a bigger position on the site. It's kind of hard if we don't have any data, if we don't have any click numbers, we don't have any impression numbers, to go back to the advertiser and say, hey, I have a plan to get you more impressions, more clicks, whatever that might be, but this is what that might look like. So we need data. So being proactive is a win-win. It does not have to be an ask. Remember, don't think about selling or ad sales or upsells as you trying to hit your revenue goals. You are actively trying to help a business be successful and help that business get to where it wants to be, that business owner get to where they want to be, because they have those same needs, not only business needs, they also have those personal needs. So, maybe they want to make more revenue, but it usually means that they want to hire another staffer. They want to, move to a different location. There's all kinds of reasons that they need to increase their revenue, and they need someone to help them do that. So for anything we sell, getting them on board is the most important thing to do. But the package that we offer must be low effort, but it's still engaging, right? So if we're going to be doing discounts, but we still want to hit our revenue goals, we might run into a situation where we have lots of advertisers, especially at that lower package, right? So we might end up with almost too many advertisers and too little space. So we need to be mindful of the reader experience. But if we do have a lot of advertisers, we also need it to be quick and easy for us to put together some ideas for advertisers. Just the traditional ad sales process of having a creative developed and all of that, it gets to be a little too much, especially when you're discounting those rates. So there are some constraints. It's got to be low effort. We still have to provide value. We can't just stick everybody at the bottom of the sidebar, and they're not really going to get the traction that they need. And when we do deliver performance and we do want to upsell them, we have to have data. So let's talk about the vehicle to actually get there. So we're talking about our packages. We have our goal, we have our the packages and our discounts, but what is the vehicle that we're actually going to use to get to where we want to be? So if we are vehicle shopping, what are some of the things that we typically look for? One is that it's a good looking vehicle, right? It's a good looking car. It's fast. Some people go for fast performance, and some people are more practical. It gets you from point A to point B. When you look at your own ad packages, your own ads, the things that you're trying to sell to your advertisers, it's kind of the same thing. Say, okay, well, is it attractive? Is it well priced? Is it highly visible? Does the site still look good if I have a bunch of these running? And then how does it perform? Does it get a lot of clicks? Is it something that I could take to the initial sales meeting and put in front of an advertiser as a spec ad? So we think about kind of templatizing the different things that we're offering. And then ultimately, is it something that impresses advertisers? Does it help you win sales, get a quick closure, and does it keep that advertiser on board? Everything that Broadstreet does, and again, whether you're with Broadstreet or not, it should be about impressing your advertiser and impressing those potential prospects at the sales meeting, delivering a campaign that repeats the business, and then keeping that advertiser on board. So we say impress, perform, renew. If you can just focus on those three elements of the ad sales process, you end up in a position with higher retention rates, happy advertisers, and you're more confident going into sales meetings. So if you're being honest, like how could each package that you offer, and think about this, how is this really helping a small business, right? And sometimes you have to be, there is a little self-honesty involved. It's like, we're not just getting their ad on our site. The ad just being on our site in itself isn't helping that business move forward. It's getting the visibility, getting the engagement. That's what is helping them move forward. So when you're positioning your packages or you're reviewing your packages, is this something that's really pushing your business forward? So let's talk about strategies for each level of that package. Then we'll actually see visuals, because we can talk, but actually showing you some ideas is, I think, always the most helpful. So for a small package, we probably have to accommodate a lot of advertisers. So if traditionally we were selling, we had 10 advertisers at $500 a month or something like that, we might be in a position where, okay, well, can I get 20 advertisers at $250 a month? So now we have this explosion of advertisers, and we don't want to compromise the user experience. We still need to provide value and performance. These are all things which are, traditionally at opposite ends of the spectrum. It's like having a lot of advertisers is usually not something that plays well with user experience. So if we have a small package, we're going to have a lot of them. We need to think about that. For our medium packages, we want to have higher impact, but maybe we can do something, and this is something we'll see in a second, do some category or section targeting. So instead of having all advertisers run of site, limiting them to specific sections, right? So if they're discounted, but they're in a specific section, we kind of multiply the amount of inventory that we have. We'll see what that looks like. And we still need to provide that stronger value and performance. And really for our large packages, and Annette, we were talking about this yesterday, not all advertisers were adversely impacted by COVID. There are plenty of advertisers who have done pretty well and still have a budget. Or what are the ones that kind of strike you as?
They had the budget, they didn't, and that was one of the way I retained some advertisers during COVID, is I just discussed changing their messaging to make it COVID appropriate, and that worked really well.
Right. What like verticals of advertisers are the ones that kind of worked out well during the pandemic?
Like any kind of service, community service business, like the local ShopRite, the YMCA. Yeah, those were the two biggest because they needed to communicate that they were, well, the store was open. They were doing following the COVID protocols to protect the consumers, giving them multiple options to get their groceries. Likewise, the YMCA became a central information center for COVID-specific information and community resource for food, childcare, et cetera.
Got it. Okay. So let's actually take a look. I'm going to pop out. Normally, I don't do this during a webinar. Let's take a look at some of the different options you have. Now, if you're a Broadstreet customer, you have access to a library of ad formats, quick spec, performance, all the stuff that we talked about, but it's not enough to kind of just see them on this page. And of course, some of these you can probably do on another platform too. But what I want to do is put them all on a website for you so you can see what it looks like when they're live, right? So this is actually brand new. It's something that if you reach out to us afterward and you're interested in getting something like this set up on your site, we can do this for you. So this is a new native advertising product. So native advertising can either mean sponsored content, which in this case it doesn't, but it can also mean just title, image, text, and link. If we have that key information, we can display it in a lot of different ways on the website. So at Broadstreet, we really thought about post-COVID, how are publishers going to need to respond? And we know there's probably going to have a situation where we have more advertisers at a lower price point, at least initially. So if we did have a situation where we needed to find a package that was low price and easy to implement, we did put together this native advertising, which if you take a look on our website, I want to make the point that this ad, this leaderboard ad at the top, this Robinson Ale House ad, is actually the exact same ad that appears in this feed on the sidebar. We developed native advertising, so when you create an ad within Broadstreet, all you have to do is specify the title of the advertiser, an image that they would like to display, a description, and a click-through URL. So once you create that within Broadstreet, depending on where you run it on your site, that ad will take on a different form. So one of those ads is appearing in the top right here. One of them is appearing in this feed right here. These are all individual ads that track performance and clicks on their own. And then you can see we also have this little local spotlight, which if we went and we clicked into an article, we would see this at the end of an article here. So you could say, okay, I need to get 50 advertisers on board. Where in the world would I put them all? If I did 50 advertisers at $100 a week, where in the world would I put them all? So being able to get them all into one place where if we're going to refresh the page, we can see that they shuffled order. They're still in that feed. One of them is randomly chosen to appear at the top of the page, and they also appear down here. So being able to get many advertisers into a few different places. So they're well positioned and their ad looks great on your site, but it also keeps that user experience as clean as possible. So there are different versions of native advertising. This one is on Chicago Parent, and we recently completed this project for them. And this is something that's a little more inline. So if you go to their parenting section on the page, see they have a sponsored content right here, blends in right with the rest of the website. This ad could run just as easily right here in this other sponsored content block on the site. So title, description, image, and link, there's a lot you can do with that. And we want to be able to run that in many places because that is really easy to create, right? We don't need a whole lot of information from the advertiser to put something like that together, especially for a spec ad, but then displaying it cleanly was one of our focuses. So for that smaller package, something like this could really work out for you. Like I said, Broadstreet is not the only way to implement something like this. We just try to make it really easy. I always think on behalf of our publishers, but this local spotlight, and you can see you could also repurpose it for other verticals like our real estate spotlight right here. You can see something similar to this on Bethesda Magazine. If you kind of view down in their right sidebar, they got this Homes of the Week section. We kind of took that, got more advertisers in there, and we got a nice feed right there. So to start thinking, okay, if I got 50 advertisers or 20 advertisers at $100 a week or $100 a month, whatever that model is, that's pretty compelling. And they're the type of advertiser who's doing relatively well right now. So we've got these native feed ads, but something that you could do for those medium packages is target advertisers to a specific area of the site. So this is one of our most famous ad formats, and you've probably seen it in other parts or other areas online or other websites. This is a billboard, right? Sweetwater Now is the first to run with it. What we've seen a lot of customers do is restrict that billboard to a specific section of the page. So this billboard is restricted to that real estate category on this website. So we also have a real estate ad targeted to the top of the site. So for those medium sized packages or even those large size packages, sometimes we can't run them everywhere. They can't be run off site, but we can restrict them to a certain area of the site. So this is a billboard running up there. And then other options also for your medium packages, just things that you can create very quickly. So we have some social media ads on the sidebar, which I think, Annette, you have used a fair amount, right?
Very successfully, yes. Those are the ones that my go-to when I'm pitching a new client, and to give them a visual, show them on the page what it will look like with their own content and their logo and their own messaging.
Got it. So we've got this ad that pulls in from a social media account like Instagram or Facebook. We have like a coupon here. These are just some of the different ad formats at Broadstreet, but again, something you could probably find elsewhere. Now, what I did want to ask, and this is something that if I was going to do a live demo of throwing something like this together, I just want to ask, does anybody have an idea for an advertiser that you would like to see a sample ad created for? So like maybe one of your local advertisers, maybe a little bigger, somebody who has, a website or is a little more established online. So Elizabeth, you were first. We're going to go with you. Muckleshoot Casino. And then there's Daniel with Kaiser Permanente, which I think is healthcare, right?
Yes.
So let's take a look. Muckleshoot Casino. All right, cool. So if we want to put something together for Muckleshoot Casino, this is what the process generally looks like to spec an ad within Broadstreet. So we'd say, okay, within Broadstreet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new advertiser. We're going to call it Muckleshoot Casino, create the advertiser, and then we want to put together an ad for them. And I want to show us quickly creating this ad, but because if we're going to be selling a lot of these things, they've got to be easy for us to create. So if we want to put together something that Annette and I were talking about, this ad format, let me see, this one that says like your business hours or your Google reviews or something like that. A lot of our ad formats are dynamic. What we could do is just create a spec ad very quickly for the casino here. So go ahead and type in business hours, find that in our list, go ahead and create one of these. Now what's really cool is that we can go ahead and within Broadstreet launch a place finder, and I can go ahead and probably just search for Muckleshoot Casino. There we go. Auburn, use this. All right, so we just put together an ad really quickly, so we can spec out these ads as really as quickly as we need to, and also get it in different sizes, things like that. So maybe we'll create a 300 by 600, and we can go ahead and customize that if we needed to. But I'm going to go ahead and create that. It's got a beautiful carpet like most casinos do. And so I've created this inside Broadstreet, and if we have time, we could do the same thing with Kaiser Permanente. And then we could say, okay, now we have a spec that we could take to an advertiser, especially if we have a meeting. It's always nice to have something when you're going to a meeting, something like in your pocket that you know is going to impress them. If you go to a meeting and you have something that you can show them, that's going to go a long way in moving them toward that proposal stage. So what I can do once I create this, I can go ahead and preview this on the site. So I'd say, hey, Broadstreet, show me what this looks like on our test website, maybe in that top sidebar right there. And this ad isn't actually live on the site right now, but we can get an idea of what that would look like. So we can go to the sales meeting, show the advertiser what their ad would look like on your site as if it were live, something that your competitors aren't doing. They probably not had the experience of before. So really powerful. We can do that with different video ads. We can do that with some of our pop-out ads, where if we visit the, I think the events page, we'll see the concept of a pop-out sticky note on the top right. So take a look at some of the different ad formats that Broadstreet offers. Like I said, it's not something that you have to implement with Broadstreet. You could do it elsewhere, but we do try and make that really easy. Things that you can produce quickly, spec quickly, but you can also run in high volume on the site. And if you are interested in this native piece, these different listings, reach out to us. We'll talk about getting that set up for you. So that was the first preview of that native piece that anyone has officially seen. But I do want you to think about how you can currently accommodate those small, medium, and large packages effectively, especially if you're discounting them. And effective is It means they sell. It means they perform well in terms of clicks and impressions. And it's also something that you can put together very quickly as a concept. If you can kind of beat everyone else to the punch and put that spec in front of the advertiser, it's going to work out really well. So Melanie asks, is the ad formats page searchable by business type? Like if I search for realtor, will it give me a list of ad formats that work well for realtors? We try and put the advertiser type in the page in the title of the ad. We don't always do it, especially if it's something that can be repurposed for other advertiser types. So it will work in some cases. We don't have it broken down by the advertiser type though. For real estate, we do that within the dashboard. So once you have an idea of the packages that you want to offer to your advertisers, you may have seen on previous Broadsheet webinars, we have this a CRM called Streak, right? Streak is a very simple CRM. If you are not using a CRM, I would urge you to look into it. Streak is a free one that you can install, and it hooks right into your Gmail, where you can put all the people that you would love to have on board as an advertiser in a pipeline. And you can see it's kind of broken down like a spreadsheet. So everybody that I haven't reached out to before, we have in this new prospect category. We have everybody that we haven't or that we've just contacted, and we move them through the stage and you go travel down the page. Okay, I contacted them. I'm in a conversation with them. I've got a meeting with them. I got a proposal. And then once we get them on board, traditionally we'd say, okay, we signed them. And that's the end of story. We've added 3 more stages. We signed them to the base package, and now we need to move them up to those higher stages. So we start at that COVID package, then move them up to a non-discounted small package or a medium package or large package. It's not over until we get them to their final destination there. So we absolutely want to use a CRM. A CRM will allow us to reach out to multiple people at once. Right? So reaching out to like a list of 20 people, but keeping it personalized. So kind of a bulk email. CRM just help us be so much more efficient in keeping track of who we're reaching out to and when, because sales it's kind of a numbers game. If we want to get 20 new advertisers on board, we probably need to reach out to maybe like 100 or 150 potential advertisers. So it makes sense to kind of do all the work to get them into the list and then start to move them through those individual stages. So when you're reaching out, this is kind of getting on Phil's question, how do I get the advertiser to respond to me? Advertisers don't respond for a lot of reasons. It doesn't mean that they're disinterested in you. But when you do reach out to them, it could be by phone, it could be by email. Sometimes for the initial outreach, the email is probably the easiest. But when you're reaching out to them, you really want to touch on a likely pain point. Put yourself in the shoes of the advertiser. They're just, in some states, this mask mandate is being lifted. Things are kind of going back to full capacity. They are ready to recover, just like you are. So when you're reaching out to them, say, hey, everyone's recovering from the lockdowns. We're trying to get, our customers back to their pre-pandemic level. Baristanet, in this case, we're using Baristanet as an example, has grown its readership, as many of you have over the last, how many people got a traffic spike over the last year or two? Baristanet has grown its readership significantly in the last year. We're now able to offer more at a lower price to recovering businesses post-COVID. So touching on pain points is such a powerful initial outreach because that's what they're thinking about. So you're more likely to get a response there. And over time, as you talk to more advertisers and you kind of figure out what their individual pain points are, you start to realize that there's a pattern between different types of advertisers. Some advice when you're reaching out, and the Rookie's Guide to Ad Sales goes into this much deeper. You want to be brief in your initial outreach. Just keep it short. Don't send them like a long email with all of your information in there. Something that they can read on their phone, which they're probably doing, and get back to you quickly. So, hey, I'm putting together some low-cost advertising options for businesses to get visibility and attention, something they probably want. So we're talking up the benefits here. I have a set number of slots on my site, so we'd have some time today or tomorrow to have a look. So just being really brief in your initial outreach. And then the follow-ups, which will always happen. So Phil, one question I did ask, like how many times do you typically follow up with an advertiser? Do you have like a set schedule for when you follow up? So If you get a chance to answer that in the chat, I'll keep an eye on that. And we can talk about that during the Q&A segment. Something we may also want to do is introduce urgency. So I have a certain number of positions planned. I've got a certain number of slots that I can do this for. Are you interested? Some people respond at a sense of urgency. And then also as we're making progress, right? Hey, I've got 3 out of 20 slots filled, right? I've got 5 out of 20 slots filled. I just want to follow up on this, right? So different people respond to different things, but very quick follow-ups that all touch on different things that are important for them to know. So when you do finally get a meeting, are you in a position where you're confident that you can impress the advertiser? Do you have something that you can put, when you're, telling them it's going to be $150 a week at a discounted rate, is it still something that's going to impress that advertiser? And Phil, you finally answered that, or follow up as many times as you can, 7+ times. So I think it's been said that most advertisers will respond after 4 or 5 follow-ups. And after that, you can still get it. I have personally followed up probably about 20 times with one advertiser or one publisher. And they eventually became a very happy customer. In fact, I bumped into them and they said, I'm so sorry that I never got back to your emails. It was just so busy. And it was just something that I hadn't considered. They had been busy growing their business or relaunching their website. There's all kinds of reasons that somebody just may not be able to get back. So, follow up, like Phil, I think that's a pretty good. I'd say most people probably cut it off around 4 or 5, but just being persistent and continuing on is something to keep in mind. Annette, how many times do you typically follow up?
I probably call 5 to 8 times, depending on the urgency of the matter, but it takes a lot of nudging, a lot of providing them with additional information, just trying to be useful, trying to act as a business consultant. And finally, it usually does come through. But it is labor intensive.
Right. It can be. And that's kind of like the most difficult part of the sales process. Once you get a response, which is really your goal, just get a response, then everything kind of gets a little bit easier. I think comparatively, the sales meeting is much easier than the follow-up process, just trying to get a response. So just to recap, we're going to open it up to Q&A. We can ask me or Annette really anything that you'd like, talk about your individual situation or anything that you wanted covered that we may not have gotten to. But just ask yourself, do you know where you're headed? If the most important thing you could possibly do today, if you're going to take an hour of time out of your day, do you know exactly where you're headed? Is there a number that you're trying to get to, and why are you trying to get to that? How much distance do you have to cover between where you are now and where you want to be? So if you're trying to go from 0 to 10K a month, or where you are to 10K a month in additive revenue, that is a good number. Now you can take the steps to break that down. That is so important. The last part, do you have a route to get there? So once you have that 10K a month, do you have a plan to get there? And this is somewhere else that some publishers need help. They reach out to us, they look at their peers, they look at each other's media kits, but do you have a route to get there? Do you have the right vehicle to kind of travel that path and get to where you want to be? These are things that Broadstreet specializes in, and we're always happy to talk shop with anybody who wants to kind of figure out how they're going to get to where they want to be. So something that we haven't done in the past post-webinar, so I kind of scheduled 20 available slots over the next 2 weeks. It's a 60-minute call, so it's a long time, because typically it's hard to kind of get a good conversation into a shorter amount of time. If you would like to book me, if you go to broadstreetads.com/office hours, you want to talk about strategy, how you're going to get to where you want to be, I'm happy to do that. So sometimes I get plenty of emails, follow-up emails afterward, kind of asking different questions. It usually ends up on a phone call anyway. Go ahead and book me at broadstreetads.com/office hours. It could be, if you want to explore Broadstreet, that's great. This webinar is not about Broadstreet, although we did mention it a few times. It's really about, do you have that goal, and how can we help you kind of break that big goal into smaller pieces? And some people like to clear the fog and get a little insight on that. I always appreciate when I'm talking to somebody who can kind of point me in the right direction. So if you would like someone like that, I wanted to make myself available. So let's get to the Q&A segment. Thank you. I think we just landed at about an hour. If you need to drop, we are going to be recording this, including the Q&A part. But if you have additional questions, drop them in the chat and me and Annette will get to them. I think, Annette, were there any in the chat?
Yeah, yes, there is one about packages. I think Philip said, did he miss something regarding the different packages we're suggesting? I don't think we put together any specific packages. I mean, that's up to the individual. We're talking, conceptually, a package could include a display ad on your website. It could include also a display ad on your newsletter. It could include an upgrade for 1 week out of the term of the ad run in a higher position at no charge, or just whatever. I customize all my packages, and actually packages could be also just termed, your ad zone, your ad buy. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Right. I think different for the print publishers. Different publishers do it in different ways. What I would suggest is do not make the digital a throw-in. So if you do have, most of your cash right now is coming from print, do not make digital just something that you toss into the deal, because you don't want to devalue what is probably the most measurable part of your marketing. Right? You can get all kinds of stats that you can't get in print online. Start to turn digital into its own thing. And also as a gap for people going from print to digital, your newsletter can be really powerful, especially if your advertisers are so used to being in print. Maybe they're asking about digital, but they just like the tangibility of print. Your newsletter kind of bridges that gap a little bit by being something real. Hey, we're going to put you at the top of our newsletter. 1,000 people or 5,000 people are going to see right there. That can be something that's a little more tangible and something for them, something that they can be comfortable with. In terms of packages, I know Annette likes to do an a la carte style. So print would probably, in Annette's world, be one thing. And then digital would be a separate thing. And she'd probably talk up the benefits to both of those.
I don't think one should cannibalize the other. I've had that question from other publishers, and because I think that digital is well suited to certain kinds of businesses, which you might not get to buy a print ad. And also with print advertisers, they might have better results using digital with call to actions for events or something they're trying to sell that they can purchase online. So I think one plays off the other really well in certain circumstances.
Absolutely. And okay, so we're gonna scrolling through the questions.
Office hours for current Broadstreet users. Yes, that is an ad format, which anyone who is on the Broadstreet.
Oh, that was the opening hours. I think she's asking, can we book that office hours for current Broadstreet users?
All right.
Yes, you can do that.
Yeah.
So that one's to Jane.
Yeah, Baristanet's website is baristanet.com. I did put it in the chat higher up.
Allison asks, I'm starting a new website. How can I sell that? No one has seen it. What's the draw? So what you don't have in traffic, deliver in value, right? So it's going to be really hard to compete with other people head on if you're kind of putting banner ads on your site similar to them. So if you did want to go really big or something very prominent with that billboard, find that initial supporter, give them a call to action, sponsor content, build in as much value in that initial package for your launch sponsors. We actually have, and this is something I'll probably ask of the street team now, we have a series that we did last year called Launch a Hyperlocal. And maybe I will actually go ahead and find that very quickly on my end. There we go. Got it. I'm going to drop this into the chat. So this is a good one, Allison. There's there is a segment in that talks specifically about ad sales when you don't have any traffic and you just got started. We had 5 panelists, all were veteran hyperlocal publishers who had been through that exact problem, and spoke to that during the webinar. So check out that video series. But to summarize, what you don't have in traffic, deliver in value. All right, so Steve says, do you have a template for us regarding why advertise it with us? It would highlight the Broadstreet reporting, why online ads. So Steve, I think actually what you may be looking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, you might be looking for something like a media kit, or are you actually looking for an ad format? So if you want to let me know in the chat, I'll address that. Okay, basically a 5 to 10 slide overview of online ads we put. So we have a media kit. And in fact, maybe I'll just do this on my screen so everyone can see it. So last year we did a digital ad sales training series. It was 8 hours long, spread over 8 individual segments. So in depth, but obviously a lot of people just like the summarized or Cliff Notes version, which is the Rookie's Guide to Ad Sales. This is the Media Kit template. It's actually modeled off of one of our favorite publishers, Scott Broadbeck at ARL Now. This kind of modeled off his media kit, and we borrowed some elements from other publishers' media kits. So you said we already have a media kit. This is a why advertise overview without all the pricing. I would say probably borrow elements from the media kit. We don't have slides specifically, but it's something I would definitely keep in mind. I think that could be helpful. But yeah, leaving out the pricing and those other items probably be helpful. So we'll keep that in mind there. So Heather asks, Annette, have you ever offered to refer a fellow advertiser, or if you refer a fellow advertiser, get a month free? So, or any specials that have worked really well for you in the past?
I have not done that. I have not, because it's, I don't know, it's just such a personal thing, reaching out to a business. And, sometimes people refer me to, or they say, oh yeah, there's another restaurant in town, or there's someone who works for me in a different business that might be interested. I've asked current advertisers if they wouldn't mind, talking to a prospective advertiser if he needs convincing. But those are advertisers I'm very close with. In terms of special promotions, yes, I've done really successful promotions around the holidays, where I'm trying to fill my page with advertisers that are relevant and timely, and I will offer them like probably a 7-week or 6-week package. So just before Thanksgiving through the end of the year, and it might be the price of 4 weeks for 6 weeks, something like that. I've also had some really successful ad promotions for summer camps back in the day when there were summer camps, where they would, be able to advertise for 4 weeks, any 4 weeks they want during the summer. It could be 4 weeks in June, or it could be 2 weeks in June, 2 weeks in July, and include the price of of native content sponsored post at a discounted rate. So the package includes advertising plus editorial. That worked good.
Perfect. Okay. Melanie asked, any advice for helping small businesses who don't have an up-to-date website or an active Facebook page? So now I'm sure you run into this all the time. Somebody who's just
let me get that phone. Stop ringing.
So to continue.
Well, there's a thing. You have to determine what is the advertiser going to gauge success on. From our perspective, we gauge success on providing visibility and reach. We cannot guarantee a number of how many sales are going to increase, how many people come in the door, because you think about it, what are they advertising? They might want to advertise something that's not particularly relevant or timely, or there's no call to action. And I always, use the example if, like, I have therapists that want to advertise, And then I have an event like the film festival that wants to advertise and sell tickets. Well, you're going to decide to buy a ticket to a film festival a lot quicker than you will decide to go to a therapist, or you're gonna talk to people, you're gonna get references, and the lead time is much longer on according to what the advertiser is trying to sell and what their business is. And so I kind of couch everything with that through that prism, is that what, as a therapist, you want to have front of mind, brand recognition. That's what we will give you if you advertise consistently over a longer period of time. Because, and then you want people to think about you. Oh yeah, I know that name. Let me consider that. Look up on their website. Versus the film festival who wants to sell tickets. So we do a call to action. We put a sticky note up, hey, last day to buy your tickets, or, special, offer a family night, to make it more attractive and kind of maximize the click-throughs and the ROI.
Got it. Thank you. I think Daniel asked number of ads versus user experience, how to consider how many ads to present, what rules do you use? Is it based on editorial content or number of pages presented? It's really just up to if you're a bigger organization, what your editorial team will put up with, which you, if you're the owner operator, will put up with, and what your model is. We have some publishers who have, and this is crazy, over 100 ads on their website. It is a lot. They're smaller, but the model is that lots of ads, lower price. So most publishers kind of find the right balance there, but the reason that we offered went ahead and showed some of those like native ad units is that this kind of eliminates that as a potential problem. Being able to put lots of advertisers in a small place, but give them the occasional bump of being at the top of the website here. This way you get more advertisers in one place. Alternative ways of doing that is running maybe like 5 or like 3 or 4 advertisers down the sidebar here, but having like maybe a selection of 20 that rotate through that slot. So there are some creative ways you can get lots of advertisers onto a page. But I would say if I had to ballpark just to give you something to kind of go by, I'd say the average is probably about like 8 ads per page. That's what we see on average. Some publishers go way above that, and not too many go too far below that. So I'd say about 8.
There's a repost from Melanie. She said, any advice for helping a small business who doesn't have an up-to-date website or an active Facebook page? Sometimes I get pulled into the role of consultant for an entire online strategy, and it gets time consuming. Yeah, that's kind of our job. It is hard to make a case for digital sales if the the client doesn't have a good website or is not savvy in terms of the internet. That's a first hurdle. So those kind of customers I kind of put in the third tier of in terms of going after them. If if they want to pursue it, then I find a way for them to give them advice on how to set up the Facebook page, how to set up your Instagram, and which is the easiest way to start your online presence. I refer them to a graphic designer who can help them set up a website. I don't do any of that myself, but I'm certainly happy to pass along the information. And small businesses have very tight budgets, so they have to be cost conscious. But you can also assure them that they're gonna, whatever they do can be leveraged through your website to bring them much more exposure and targeted exposure as well.
Got it. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions, but I wanted to pull up Baristanet because I think Jane had a question. She said, I see that Annette has digital ads stacked on top of one another on the right-hand rail.
Yeah.
Okay, we are afraid to do that since it might be a turnoff. So Jane, turn off to the advertiser or a turn off to the reader? Because I don't personally see a problem with that.
We've never had an issue with that at all. So I don't know what, I would like to know why you think that's a turnoff.
I think that's a good question, because maybe
I mean, everyone's website design is different. This is, a pretty standard template for some, some websites, and you have the freedom to put your ads wherever you want them. We also have ads within each post. If you click on an article that's been written, you can see some horizontal ads like that one right there.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, I think getting them generally toward the top of the page is a good goal. I can kind of see how on mobile that would be an issue, but one of the things that we do try and solve is repositioning any ads that are in your sidebar somewhere better on a mobile device, and it depends on the layout of the site. But I guess an alternative, I mean, you could rotate them through the same position on every other page load, something like that.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a comment from an advertiser in regard
Never.
to that?
Never. Mm-mm.
Got it. Okay. So interesting.
That's a valid point. You might just program, I don't know, Kenny, what do you think? You tend to stack them at the all together after content, but you could stack them in between each
usually
content, right?
My usual recommendation to a new publisher is to at least reserve a spot at the top of your sidebar as like kind of a premium placement. I think Baristanet, you guys used to have that. I don't know if it is still the big box on the top right of the sidebar.
Uh-huh.
And then sometimes I'd separate it with something, maybe like a newsletter sign up or recent posts, and then I might have like 3 more units. I think something that you guys have going on here is the sticky sidebar to keep them in view. Mm-hmm. So that may be another reason that you have 2 ads in that, because it's probably all within a sticky block. That may be the missing piece that we didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jason, we'll probably call this the last question because we're about 15 minutes over, but if you do have any additional questions, we can go ahead and answer those at the office hours. We have a client who's doing fantastically well with his clicks, and he's just not satisfied. We weren't sure how to convince them that the ad is working. So sometimes you have to point to metrics that you're going to see elsewhere. The internet average is 0.06%. So usually a local ad at the minimum is doing 0.1%, but it's almost double the internet average. So sometimes it's just pointing to those metrics and kind of setting it like, kind of understanding their expectations in terms of what they want.
Yeah, well, how is he what is he judging you on, and what has worked better? Ask him what's his bar that determines success. Because you have to understand what his expectations are, and like Kenny said, they have to be tempered.
Right. Jason says 274 clicks. No one has mentioned that they saw the ad on our site.
Has he ever advertised before?
Has he ever mentioned? I mean, we probably wouldn't say this to the advertiser, but 274 clicks. Something that Howard Owens at the Batavian says. He says, it's like making the phone ring 274 times, right? That's the way he positions it for his advertisers. So if you want to hear from somebody who's been doing this for about 10 years, that's what he'll say. 274 clicks, that's plenty of clicks. Most people probably aren't going to come in and say, hey, I saw your ad. I think that in itself is kind of an interesting expectation. Yeah. But people are definitely seeing the ads. And you probably, with Broadstreet, also have that hover metric. So that's probably far above the actual click metric. So people are definitely seeing it.
Yeah. And Jason, I'd be interested in knowing what he's advertising. Is it just a branding campaign, or is there a call to action? And you might tell them, well, you want to have more clicks, let's give them something to click on, like buy now or save money or make your reservation or whatever it would be.
Interesting. So I think it could try. I mean, if he wants people to mention they saw it as ad, we should probably have something that's really nice and compelling inside that ad. So
Bathrooms and remodeling. Okay, Jason, that's the thing. People that bathrooms and remodeling are like therapists. People don't say, "Oh, I'm going to remodel my bathroom tomorrow," and call this guy. That has a long curve. And he should know that. Ask him how long it takes to complete a sale when someone walks in the door. It's probably 2 or 3 months.
Right. Yeah. Stop by our showroom. I mean, at the point where nobody's impulse buying a new bathroom or kitchen. So what I would do in this case is say, okay, listen, like telling people to stop by your showroom, they're not getting in their car and going to your showroom. But what we can do is we can show them your work, right? So what I would probably do is look into the ad format library and find, Elizabeth says, I just impulse bought a new kitchen last week. Counterpoint.
Hey, so, I would say, stop by our virtual showroom and have some kind of a visual, like Kenny was talking about, a slideshow of all his different kitchens.
I would ask that advertiser if he has any images of some of the work he's done and make that the showcase. So he's going to get a big bump in clicks, most likely. But what we want to do is let people see his work. It's kind of like people will, they'll take time to look at something that they're really into, whether it's like real estate or new houses. Kitchens is one of those things. Food is another one of those things. There are certain advertisers that just lend themselves so well to visual advertising. So how can we get the picture of the work that he's doing front and center on your website? So I would maybe take a look at something like, and you don't have to, it does say it's for real estate, but repurpose it and put his most recent job in there, or the one that he's most proud of. Put some pictures in there. You could also use a gallery ad. Get that imagery in there, because anything with imagery is going to get a lot of clicks. You're going to get a huge click-through rate if you put some really good-looking imagery in there. And that way, it's something that's really educating people about the work he can do. Sometimes it's hard to get that kind of, like this right here is, it's really big. It's really, really impactful. It's something that you would probably see in almost like a magazine. If you're flipping through a big glossy placement, get something big and impactful and really showcases his work, because that's the best thing he can do, is really educate people, is the quality of his work. Okay, perfect. All right. So if you do have any follow-up questions, want to let everyone get back to your day. I know taking an hour out of your day, especially if the owner operator, even if you're ad sales director, ad sales rep, it's a big ask. So it's got to be important. So I really hope that this was helpful to everybody. Take advantage of the office hours. Thank you, everybody, for hopping on. It was great to have all of you. The next webinar we might do may be very Broadstreet specific. I got a lot of emails after the last webinar asking if we could do something that goes over some of the most important features, because again, you're out doing things or running your business. You don't have a chance to just scroll through the most recent customer success monthly emails and see all the cool stuff we put out. So one webinar to get that all in one place. You can see what that looks like. Thank you, everyone.
Hope everyone enjoyed this, and hope we found it useful, and we're happy to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So everyone enjoy the rest of the day. Good luck in recovering post-COVID, and talk to you at the next webinar. Take care, everyone.